You're listening to the Tiger 2 podcast, the go-to sports show for students, by students about all things Tiger sports. Recorded at WUMR 91.7 FM and powered by Tiger News. Now here are your hosts, Bryant, Dacus, and Jackson Brown.
Welcome back to another edition of the Tiger 2 podcast. I'm Bryant Dacus. You can follow me on Twitter at Bryant_Dacus.
And I'm Jackson Brown, and I don't have a Twitter, so I guess you can find me on Facebook or MySpace if that still exists. Sometimes I'm still in 2009.
Yeah, I can tell. Facebook. Wow. I mean, I have a Facebook. I don't really use it that much.
You know what it is? It's a news site now more than anything. That's as a news professional, as a media professional, that's where I get my sources.
Yeah,
my videos.
I'm sure there was a lot of videos and sources about the Tigers this weekend, because what a weekend it was for the Tigers and the city of Memphis.
Oh my gosh, what a great time to be a Memphis Tigers fan. What a great time to be a Memphian.
I mean, let's start off with game day. Just the experience. I told you this last week, and I'm pretty sure you didn't believe me. I pulled up 3:15.
3:15.
3:15. I can show you. I can show you the. I parked in one of those public parking lots where you got to pay at the little like machine, and my slip, I have it in my truck. 3:15.
And I know for a fact because I slept in. I left my house around 4:30 that morning.
Yeah.
And when I pulled up to Beale Street, I think I saw your truck
Probably
in the
did.
Orpheum parking lot.
That's exactly the parking lot I was in.
Yeah, and what was so wild, the city showed up,
Yeah.
and they showed up early.
Yeah.
And I knew that the second I got there at 4:30, 4:45-ish, that line was straight down Beale Street.
Mm-hmm.
They were already starting to blow stuff up. They were starting to, hoot and holler, and I ended up standing with all the SMU fans, unfortunately.
I did too. It was weird.
It was really weird. They were hiding. And, the football team was hiding too, but
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. But no, it was a really fun day. Talking about the SMU fans, I had there was one really obnoxious SMU fan. And I don't say that just because he was an SMU fan. Like, he was just being loud, and I get it, it's game day. But, like, the stuff he was saying, like, hey, this is a family broadcast network. Let's keep it, like, PG. He was sometimes getting close to R. Like, he was saying some stuff that I was like, yo, chill out.
I think we might have stood next to the same fan.
We might have. But this other SMU fan taps me on the back just in the middle of game day. Taps me on the back. I thought I felt something, but I didn't look back at first. Like, when you get in those situations and, like, you're around a bunch of, like, random people and you think you feel somebody touch you, but you, like, don't turn around because you're like, that'd be awkward if they, like, didn't mean to touch me or anything. It was one of those. And I felt a tap, and I just ignored it. And then I felt another tap. And I was like, okay, somebody's touching me. So I turned around, and this SMU fan was like, hey, I get it. Like, he's rough, but please don't judge all SMU fans like that. And I was like, you know what? I'm not anymore because I met you.
That's very, very mature of you. I did not have the same SMU fan experience around me.
Well, I also know somebody who goes to SMU, so I'm kind of like, I know, like, it's different, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know anybody. Honestly, I have one good friend from Texas, and that's it. Every other Texan to me is irrelevant.
So you judge them based on that man?
Oh, absolutely. And not even that man, just everybody else around me. And like I was saying last week, it's Dallas. And I know every time I had an SMU fan say something obnoxious to me, I'd be like, okay, but you still them boys, though.
True. We them boys.
But the Tigers were them boys on Saturday night.
Yes, the Tigers showed out after a great college game day, one that ESPN loved. I mean, they're talking about it all day on SportsCenter.
Oh, yeah. Chris Fowler, I don't know if you remember, after they stopped recording the show, he turned back around to the crowd and was like, you guys legitimately were one of the best we've ever had.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, oh. And, I felt good because I had been pelted by a Jimmy John's sandwich probably 5 minutes before that. And I still ate it because that was my first food in 6.5 hours.
Hey, I don't blame you. I was starving after it was over. But moving on to the actual game, Tigers, I mean, they came out ready to play.
That game lived up to the hype.
It really did. They got a 54-48 win over SMU. SMU, they tried to make it close there at the end.
Yeah, and I know SMU is a streaky team. I know they're pretty famous for their second half, fourth quarter comebacks this year, but how much of that do we put on the defense? This is 2 weeks in a row of a 40-point against performance and 2 weeks in a row of a second half comeback. Really a game that should have been put away, I thought, by the end of that third quarter. But, pulled away with the win. Eventually, one of the things about this Memphis football team, great teams find ways to win.
Yeah.
Bad teams find ways to lose.
Yeah.
This Memphis team last year lets the SMU finish that comeback, lets them come back into that game. And that didn't happen this time.
No, and I mean, yeah, I think you can probably say the defense definitely didn't play one of their best games. But at the same time, the offense played a great game.
It was one of the best offensive explosions, one of the most dynamic offensive performances I've seen from this Memphis team in a long time.
Yeah. And even before we deep dive into the offense, special teams.
Oh, it was huge.
I mean, this Memphis is starting to turn into special teams U.
And shout out to Riley Patterson, 4 for 4, and they weren't cheapos either. He had a 49 and a 50-yarder.
Yeah. You remember, I mean, Riley Patterson hasn't been the best kicker his whole career. I mean, he's in his junior season right now. And I remember him as a freshman. He missed some big-time kicks.
He used to, honestly, he used to be a letdown in the big-time situations.
He missed one big one against UCF, I remember.
Oh, I do too, believe me. But it was great to see him on Saturday night. And I know there wasn't a game-changing kick per se, but there were really a lot of clutch situations. There were a lot of third and long situations that didn't get converted, where it seemed like momentum would shift towards SMU, and then he makes a 50-yard kick.
Yeah.
And pads that lead even further. His kickoffs were great, I thought, all game. There really wasn't a lot of return ability from SMU. I think they got outside of the 30 one time.
Yeah.
And I just thought he did a really good job. So shout out to him.
Shout out to him.
But also, this was also aided by SMU not really knowing how to punt on Saturday night.
Gosh.
I feel bad for him.
Shout out to Shane Bouchel, though, for those drop kicks.
I was just about to say, he was their best punter.
I mean,
you got to tag him on the Pat McAfee show or something like that.
Or the brand.
Shout
out to Pat for coming down to Memphis for game day.
In jorts, too.
Yeah.
In jorts. But, yeah, definitely for the brand to Shane Bouchel. That was probably, outside of his ridiculous 60-yard throws, they were probably some of his two best plays of those pinpoint punts.
He looked good. I mean, he had a great game all around. I mean, throwing the ball. I think he had over 400 yards throwing. I mean,
yeah, definitely. Both quarterbacks had great games and great decision-making, too. There were no turnovers in this game.
Which was surprising to me.
Yeah, especially from Brady White.
Well, Bouchel turns the ball over more than Brady White does.
This year.
Very true. But going to Brady White, he had a tremendous game. 350 yards, 3 touchdowns. Like you said, no interceptions. He's looking good. He's looking like he is on a new level, and I'm here for it.
Oh, absolutely. I'm definitely on the Brady White bandwagon now. You know what I love? He had a couple of sacks in the game. He went down a couple of times, but seemingly every single time he went down, the very next play he would bounce back.
Mm-hmm.
He had a couple of ridiculous third and long conversions where I was looking at that from the field saying, oh my gosh, he's arrived. Mm-hmm. He's here. This is his coming out party.
Mm-hmm.
He did an unbelievable job in some very pressure situations. He had, I think, 2 98-yard drives that resulted in points.
Yeah.
One with a ridiculous touchdown from Coxie. It was just a great game all around.
Yeah. And I mean, just looking at his stats since Temple, so the 3 games after Temple, 985 yards and 10 touchdowns.
Yeah, and you look at his average completion rating, it's over 10 yards.
Yeah.
And, that's what you want from a quarterback more than anything. If you are gaining a first down on every single completed pass, you're doing your job as a quarterback, really. And he's just, Memphis's big playability now is just through the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Especially with, you have Coxie now and Gibson. What an unbelievable come-out-of-nowhere story he was.
I mean, I expected him to be a big-time player out of JUCO. Then last year, he didn't get the plays, as many snaps as he wanted. But this game I could not have dreamt of a game like this for Antonio Gibson.
You heard both Mike Norvell and Brady White post-game talking about how they're just overjoyed with this coming out party for Gibson in his senior year, to lead the team. He was 3 rushing yards away from a 100 game.
That is insane.
He had 130 receiving yards. He had 100 and I don't have a stat page.
59 kickoff return yards.
Yeah, that ridiculous 97-yard touchdown, which I was in the photo room for. But yeah, he had an unbelievable game. He was the first Memphis player since 2008 to score touchdowns in 3 different ways.
And he was the first FBS player this year to score a touchdown 3 different ways.
Yeah, there's the dynamicism that he brought to that field. He created so much headaches on that SMU sideline. Let me tell you, just walking down the sideline, on their sideline that game, the defensive coaches, the defensive units, they were just shaking their heads the entire time because they didn't have a solution they had a solution for Kenny.
Oh, because that's the only thing they scouted for, and you could tell every single play. I mean, I was up in the box doing play-by-play, and you could just tell every play that they ran was geared for Kenny Gainwell.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it was effective in a way. It held him to 88 yards, still got in his end zone.
Yeah, I mean, those were hard-fought 88 yards. I mean, he
absolutely
worked for those 88 yards.
Yeah, he did an incredible job. Mm-hmm. But, outside of Kenny Gainwell, they didn't game plan for Coxie. They didn't game plan for Antonio Gibson. I'll absolutely tell you that.
And they both had great games.
The 50-yard touchdown to Coxie was one of the highest quality catches I've seen.
Yeah.
The 3rd and 19 conversion to Gibson, I think that was in triple coverage.
Yeah.
And he still gets up and grabs that ball out of midair. It was a great performance. We expected a great performance from both receiving corps. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Prochet on SMU. He was just an absolute beast. Mm-hmm. But I think the Memphis receiving corps really showed its true colors on Saturday night. That was an incredible performance.
Yeah. We talked about the defense a little bit, but shout out to Jaleel Clemens, the true freshman from Starkville, Mississippi, getting his first 2 sacks of his young college career. I mean, he looks like you give him some time, he is going to be an animal on the defensive line.
And he had a great quote post-game, too. They pulled him up for that post-game press conference, and he said, Shane Buechele has a great arm, doesn't have great feet.
No.
And I love that.
And that's what I said. I mean, I don't know if I said it on here, but I told some people, Buechele is a great quarterback when he has time. When he has to run around back there and he gets uncomfortable, he doesn't make good throws. And you saw that a lot Saturday night. He had a great game, had a lot of completions, but those incomplete passes, it was because the Tigers were pressuring him. The Tigers were making him uncomfortable, and he had to get the ball out of his hand.
Yeah, and it always seemed to be in the pressure situations too, which I really enjoyed. Still gave up a lot of points, especially in that second half. Mm-hmm. But the fact that the Tigers brought pressure when the pressure was already there, it just compounded upon itself. Yeah. And Buechele had a good game, but it wasn't a great game. No. You need a great game to surpass the Memphis offense, and they didn't.
Yeah, and so big win. They get a well-deserved bye week, and so they
rest up, get Patrick Taylor back.
Yeah, I really don't know if he'll come back.
Well, we'll see.
We'll see. I mean, I don't know.
Could create some headaches though in that backfield.
Oh, that would be insane. A 1-2 punch from him and Kenneth Gainwell would be. I don't even want to think about it. It's giving me headaches just thinking about it.
With Coxie and Gibson on the outside.
Yeah,
that's called an offense you can't game plan for.
No, because there's weapons everywhere. But yeah, big win for them. They'll get this bye week, and then they will travel to Houston. But they're not the only team who is doing some things on the field right now. The basketball team is doing their thing on the court, getting a huge win last night against South Carolina State, 97-64. And let me tell you something. James Wiseman can play basketball.
James Wiseman, as advertised. Absolutely. Number 1 recruit in the country for a reason. 28 points, 11 rebounds. He looked physically dominant when he was on the floor. Mm-hmm. And it was great to see. He was a poster child up in the paint. And I was saying earlier, he looked like Taco Fall with support.
And athleticism.
And basketball ability.
Yes.
It was just great performance.
If you're going to compare James Wiseman and Taco Fall as freshman, that would be insane.
Ooh.
Taco Fall came to college. The only positive about him, if you were making a positive and negative chart about him, the only positive about him would be he has size. The negative list would be so long because he did not know how to play basketball.
Oh, absolutely. If you want to compare, so I will compare James Wiseman to Taco Fall in the size category.
Yes.
He is more physically dominant than the competition that he came up against.
Yeah.
Against much lesser competition, for sure, but he just looked leaps and bounds ahead of everybody else on the floor. and his basketball ability, his athleticism just completely showed. 28 points, you get a double-double in your first game and you weren't playing exhibition. I'd say that's coming as advertised. I can't wait to see more of him, especially against better competition.
Yeah, not too bad. The forum was crazy for him. I mean, they announced him. I mean, it was loud. Of course. You could not hear yourself think when they announced James Wiseman.
It was like back at the Liberty Bowl.
It was insane. I mean, yeah, it was insane. And it was every single time he touched the court, he would check out, he would come back in, now entering the game, James Wiseman. The place went nuts. It was insane.
And, it's great for the team now. It's great for the team in the future, too, because when you have a number one recruit on your team, you see the impact that it has just from a hype level, just from a fandom perspective. Everybody gets into the team. Everybody buys in. People start believing. People want to see, okay, preseason 14th in the AP poll.
Yeah.
How much do they live up to that hype?
Yeah.
And moving forward, if you have other number one recruits, you're starting to think, this Memphis team, this Memphis sports town, they're sort of getting behind this guy.
Yeah.
Maybe I should go there. And it speaks volumes for what Penny is trying to do, reestablishing Memphis basketball.
And James Wiseman just instantly makes this team better. I mean, you think about it, without James Wiseman, I think both exhibition games, they were out-rebounded offensively. One of the games, I think it was against Christian Brothers, they were out-rebounded entirely. And so bringing him back, I mean, they looked incredible on the boards. And it's not just because James Wiseman's getting on the boards. I think James Wiseman had 11 boards. But with him down there, you have other guys who aren't having to do the work that James Wiseman does. And they're fresher. I mean, Precious Achiuwa is a 4. A 3-4. He's not a 5. He was having to run the 5 in exhibition. So when you get him at 4, he's able to be more athletic. He's not, he doesn't have to be down there in the post the whole time. He can move around. He can float around. And you can spread it out and get more threes up because you've got the most talented player on the court down there ready to rebound whatever you throw up. So, I mean.
What's funny about this? We're talking about James Wiseman being a true 5. Penny Hardaway being the coach of a team with a true 5. I remember Penny played with a particular player who was a true 5, and that team found a lot of success.
Yeah, and he's compared James with that certain 5 multiple times. That 5 being Shaquille O'Neal, who definitely helped Penny out a lot down in Orlando.
Maybe Penny's trying to recreate those glory days.
I mean, maybe
in Memphis
he is.
town.
I don't know. Damian Ball looks pretty athletic.
It's going to be a good year for sure.
Definitely.
Shout out to his son, Jaden Hardaway. 11 minutes on the floor, 9 points. He was 3 of 4 from the field. He might be a good 6th man.
Yeah, I mean, he definitely had some good looks during last night's game. And I mean, he's a player. I mean, a lot of people think that he came to Memphis because, his dad got the job as coach. I mean, the kid can play. The kid was down at IMG. He can play basketball, and he's a good player, and I think he's going to show a lot this year. But one thing that this team has to improve, and I wouldn't be worried about it if I was a Memphis fan, the three-point shooting. It's going to come. But last night did not look good at all. 6 for 20. Your main guys that you want shooting the ball, Boogie Ellis 1 for 4, Lester Quinones 0 for 3, Tyler Harris 1 for 7. I mean, those are your shooters. They did not look like shooters last night, but those are 2 freshmen, 1 sophomore. They're young guys. We saw it last year. Tyler Harris can shoot the ball.
Yeah, they're young guys. They're going to get their reps,
Yeah.
like we were saying, especially when you have starters who are filling into their natural spots now. They're going to get their times. They're going to get their chances and their opportunities. The big thing that we need from this team, like we said earlier, offensive boards.
Yeah.
If we get the offensive boards, the three-point opportunities, they're going to come.
Absolutely. And I think with James down, we keep going back to James. I think James brings that because, there was a shot. Damian Ball put up a 3 last night, and it was very early in the game. It got the forum rocking. He missed it, bounced up. James Wiseman just went up and got it and went down with the dunk.
Poster.
It was insane. So I think, that definitely helps a lot. But some other guys last night that had big games, we talked about him a little bit. Precious Achiuwa, he had 14 points, 8 rebounds. Pretty good game for him and only 17 minutes of play. So, he didn't play much, compared to the other starters, but he made the most of his minutes.
Pretty solid debut, top 100 recruit, not as touted as Wiseman was, but, different role. And it was good to see him perform in a game that mattered.
Yeah, and another guy who had a good night last night, Damian Ball, 8 points, 8 assists for the freshman. I think that's what you're going to see a lot. And even Coach Hardaway said, I didn't play him enough. He should have gotten more minutes. And so it sounds like Friday against UIC, later on or next week when they play Oregon, he's going to get more minutes. And I think if he gets more minutes, you could see this guy being a double-double guy with double-digit points, double-digit assists. And I think having that is going to be awesome, and especially from a guy who a lot of people were like, okay, cool, he's just a add-on. Nobody thought he would come in right away and make the difference that he's making right now.
Right, and I think this contest against UIC at the Forum on Friday, that's going to be a tweaker game.
Yes.
That's going to be a tinker opportunity, because I want to see more of Precious and Wiseman on the court at the same time, because that team looked great with both of them on the court. And it just brings a dynamic not only to the conference but to the entire Southeast region. Yeah, really, that I don't see anybody else has. Outside of the champions, outside of your Kentuckys, your Duke, it just bodes so well for Memphis basketball. But yeah, that Friday game, that's really going to be a big tell of what they're going to be trying to do against Oregon. Yeah, big game on Tuesday on the West Coast.
Yeah, and I think, and you talked about James and Precious. Another combination I want to see more of is James and Lance Thomas. Both those guys, they got, I don't know how many minutes together on the court they had last night, but it wasn't a lot, but it wasn't where it was just like one series with them out there. But they are both incredibly long. And there were, I think, twice where somebody would throw up a shot and Lance Thomas would go up and block it. They'd get the rebound. They'd go back up with it, and James was right there and blocked it. I mean, it was fun to watch just because both those guys getting blocks. And I think that's big because the depth you have on this team is probably better, one of the better depth rosters that they've had in the past couple of years.
Oh, definitely. Penny has so many tools that he can work with on this team. And, it's a sign of a young team. It takes a couple of contests, takes a couple of games for them to really get in a rhythm with each other, really to feel out who is going to be working with everybody and who's not going to be working together. Yeah. And even against lesser competition, putting up 97 points in your opening game at home with a rockin' Forum, it's great for this basketball team.
Absolutely. And so hopefully another guy, Isaiah Stokes, hopefully they said they're still working on getting his waiver cleared so that he can play. Hopefully that will come in really soon. I know they said Florida's working with them. Hopefully that goes smoothly and they can get him out onto the court soon, because that would add another guy that would, if they can get Isaiah Stokes on the court, this team will be deadly. That just adds more depth down low, and it'd just be huge. But looking up right before we wrap up to the two games they've got coming up, UIC this Friday. It's going to be another game like South Carolina State. UIC is a team that doesn't have many bigs and a team that struggled in their first game against a team that I can't even pronounce.
Yeah, exactly. It was, we looked them up on ESPN, and they didn't have a logo for their team.
I think they're an NAIA school.
Yeah. And, it's a regular season game, so you can't, you have to go with that one game at a time mentality, just go 1-0. Mm-hmm. But like I said, it's going to be a good feel out for the team. It's going to be, because you got a big test in Oregon. Oh, yeah. And I know Oregon didn't look great against their competition last night. But when you have a top 15 opponent that has skill, they will play up to their opponent. Mm-hmm. And I think Memphis is going to be a heavy favorite in that game in Portland, which is basically in Oregon's back door. Yeah. So they're not going to be very happy about that. And, Memphis is going to have a huge test. It's going to be a really big test. Yeah. And we'll see if they can live up to it.
Yeah, because, with losing Infali Dante for Oregon, they don't have a really big man that can really, I think, contest with James Wiseman. So, yeah, they have athletes on their team. Some of their guys that they were really looking to produce didn't really produce in their first game, and I think that's another thing where it's going to take them some time to get comfortable. But I really do think this team, when we are back here recording this next Wednesday, I think this team could be 3-0, and I think that's a good possibility.
3-0 with momentum, with a little bit of national spotlight from the Oregon game on them. It's going to be a great time to be a Tiger. It already is a great time to be a Tiger. Both sports, what more could you ask for?